Pastor Subi couldn't make it, and they asked me to take his session. So I texted him earlier and told him that we are praying for him, and I think he had a slight setback, but he seemed in good spirits. So continue to lift him up in prayer. He's a good, incredible man of God in the way he has run himself and kept himself in a world that is kind of Hollywood or Bollywood is weird at best. So I want to take you through 4 or 5 moods, but I want it to be interactive. But this interactive is different. We're not doing a Q&A. We're just searching for responses to see where you stack up on the spectrum of participation. So when you look at from profit to purpose, the first question is, what do you do? And when I meet people, they'll start with, I am, and they go into a verbal vomit of what they do. Nobody cares. We're just asking to be polite. We really don't want to know that much about you. And I learned this the hard way. There was a young boy by the name of Matthew whose father, Gary, was an insurance agent. And insurance agents are notoriously known for talking. So when Gary came home one day and his son was playing, and the son kept asking the mother, he says, Mama, help me with my homework. And the mom said, honey, I help you with your homework all the time. Why don't you ask your dad? And he said, I don't want to know that much about it. So some of us have a tendency to over-explain what you do. There's something called an elevator pitch if you have purpose in your heart. And before you can, Profit to Purpose is a broad stewardship program I designed for corporations, and it runs for 2 days. I took out a salient 4 or 5 points in it. But the first is what we call role identity. Years ago, I read a book by the name of Up the Down Organization, written by Bob Townsend, who turned Avis around. He had come from American Express. And he wrote this book when he was in retirement on a yacht. So I guess he did well. He said every group he ever met with, he asked 3 questions. And these are identity questions. Question was, what do you do? What would you like to do? And how will you know when you get there? So I'll try to cover as much ground as I can, and if we come up short on some areas, just realize we put this together yesterday. So what do you do is role identity. What would you like to do is role destiny. How will you know when you get there is role benchmark. So when you introduce yourself and you introduce the perception of who you are, do not begin by telling us what you do or what you'd like to do. Rephrase it by saying, I represent an organization, even if you're in charge. Or put it third party, saying, our customers get from us the best human resource chronicling in the marketplace. Our customers have the benefit of automation that we have designed that solves incredible problems. Be customer-centric, be other people focused. Sometimes in our identity, we have a lot of I problems. I am, I do, I want, I have, I struggle. Good for you. I unemployed. So, that's the logic of it. The English language is weird. And you have to learn to master it if you want to understand purpose. I make a pretty good living with the English language. But see, when I look at my bride and I say, sweetheart, you look like the first day of spring, I sound romantic. But if I tell her, you look like the last day of a long, hard winter, it's the same day, but you get a frying pan to the face. Okay? If I look at my bride and I say, when I look at you, the hands of time cease, you sound romantic. If you tell a woman, you got a face that'll stop a clock, it's the same thing, but it's the diametric opposite reaction. Be careful what you're saying. See, our communication has things that matter when you're trying to because you're doing a twofold purpose here. You're trying to make profit in your organization, but you're trying to glorify God. Get out of the way. Let the Jesus in you find the Jesus in them. And that way, something will change in the way you approach yourself. There's a humility that comes about You downplay what you do and you upplay what God allows you to do. That's a different version, and people have fun being around you. So first thing is, ask yourself, what do you do? And then populate it by asking some questions of yourself. How do you describe it? How do your customers describe what you do? I have the rare privilege today of servicing customers I first offered products and services 30 years ago, and they are not even in the same industry, and I'm not in the same industry. Value that David talked about earlier is in the doer, not the deed. Your value proposition in not what... I ask people, so tell me a little bit about yourself. What do you sell? Oh, I sell insurance, I sell financial services, I sell myself. Well, that's illegal. Okay? You can't be selling yourself. That's not cool. What we are saying is, we put ourselves too much into the equation. What do? I'm a byproduct of what my customers have allowed me to do and my family blesses me to do. It changes the perspective. It's other people focused. See, Eleanor Roosevelt said, other people can tell you who you are and who you're not, but only you can fulfill it. And our self-fulfilling prophecy is always limiting. So when I think from profit to purpose as a stewardship, the goal of making money, the goal of having a successful endeavor, the goal of a kingdom mindset is so that you can bless other people. The goal of that, don't get so bogged down. We major in minors. You know, we're always at the shallow end of the pool asking ourselves, you know, my dad used to say, son, you can go through life scratching your nose this way. You can go through life scratching your nose this way. Either way, you'll get rid of the itch. This way, you'll look like an idiot. Some things are right, some things are wrong. Some things are good, some things are bad. Some things are yes, some things are no. Some things are black, some things are white. But we have this, our national conditioning. Brother Blesson talked about chalega. You know what my favorite one is? Log kya kahenge? ये कौन है ये लोग 40 साल से ढूंढ रहा हूं मिले ही नहीं वो खुद अपने लोग ढूंढ रहे nobody cares लोग क्या कहेंगे who cares when I wrote my first book my mother don't tell anybody you'll have bad luck baloney you tell everybody you don't tell anybody if you read a bad book but our mindset that self-limiting prophecy what do other people think about you that makes you believe you need a kingdom mindset. You know, you're supposed to represent the good news. Most of the days, you look like the cruise director for the Titanic. Like someone licked all the red off your candy. You know, in Telugu, we have a saying, bucket avadon taginattu mokam pettukunte. If you have a face that looks like, you know, I don't know how many of you know the illustration I gave. When we were youngsters, to get rid of worms, they used an old-fashioned remedy of castor oil. And it hurt both ends. So my mother would always say, you know, you have this grimace, you know, bucket out. I mean, you look like you have a face of someone who drank a bucket of castor oil. And yet I'm about the good news. You look like yesterday's bad news. Put a little pep in your step, a little bounce to your ounce. People ask me, why do you laugh? Laughter is the best medicine. You laugh for no reason, you probably need medicine. But that's a whole different reason. Laughter is not grinning from ear to ear like you've eaten a banana sideways. That's insanity. But at least, yeah, I mean, look like we're the only ones who know how it ends. It is finished. We have the grand privilege of participating in a king's finished work. Humbling recommendation, walk alongside me, I've already conquered. What do other people think about you? Well, I want to run a business, I want to honor God. Do you truly believe that? Or are you going to go through the motions of everyday nonsense? Some days I'll get on the elevator in a hotel and everybody is looking. How many of you have a smartphone? How many of you became smarter because of it? Zero. You use it for everything except making a call. And I'll see all these people on the elevator and I'll turn around and say, now the reason I called this meeting, everybody looks up. Because what I feel is we go, Mr. Ziegler used to say, if you let someone else row your boat, they're going to take it to where they want to go, not where you want to go. An ex-boss of mine from IBM put it this way, in the world we live in, perception is fact, fact is never fact. Many of you have seen me do this before, but play along. Raise your right hand like this. Now put it on your chin. For those of you who missed, the chin is this pointed thing at the end of the face. बड़े आए communicate करने वाले, simple English. And आप लोग, all of you, you're a doctor. I'm a doctor. You don't know your cheek from your chin. What is wrong with you people? You want a kingdom mindset, you don't know your head. Common sense is not common practice. See, turn to the person on your left and say, I think you're amazing. Yeah. Turn to the person, your other left. Yeah. Turn to the person on your right and say, I'm glad you're facing facts. It's been said that every third person in this world is either amazingly beautiful and unusually bright, incredibly handsome and unfailingly brilliant. If you look to the left and the right, you'll realize it's not either one of them. From this moment forward, think of yourself as that third person. That the creator of the universe said that when I made that, my child, I broke the mold. There's not another in all of creation that looks like that person. That's an inheritance worthy of claim. That's who you are. When your customers look at you, they say, this is a child of the King. The story is told by Brian Harbour in his book, Rising Above the Crowd, of a story in East Tennessee. There was a young boy who was born to unknown parentage. He was a bastard child. Because his mother had raised him in absolute anonymity, this boy had a self-image that was very low. And he would come to school and he would hide at the back of the class and he would try to not play with anybody. And one day he heard of a little preacher who had come to that East Tennessee foothills. And this preacher was talking about the goodness of God and how God loved everybody regardless of their earthly lineage. And one day this boy caught wind of that. He would start attending church. He would come late and sneak out early so not to draw a crowd. But one day the message of the preacher got so captivating that the young boy stood up to retreat and realized the church had already recessed, which means he had now to confront a crowd. And he heard a booming voice from someone behind him. Whose boy are you? And he turned around and looked into the eyes of that young minister. And the young minister's smile grew to a big grin and said, I know whose child you are. The family resemblance, it's unmistakable. You are a child of God. With that, he swatted him on the rear and said, go forth and claim your inheritance. Many, many years later, Ben Hooper said, that was the day he was elected governor of Tennessee and then re-elected. Whose child are you? That's how you inherit a kingdom promise, by striding into every meeting realizing you're a child of God. You have his inheritance on your heart. You have his image. That's how it works. So I want you to populate your pages as you're writing this by asking yourself some questions. If you turn the page, we've got a few things that we'd like to look at. And I'm going to teach you some of these things. In the world we live in, features tell, benefits sell. So when you tell me about your company, I do financial services. I do financial planning. We do personal redeployment. We do automation. Those are all features. It's nothing more than me looking at what business are you in? I'm in the 3-ring binder business because I produce handouts. That's basically. No, selling is what you do for someone. Telling is what you do to someone. I've been in sales for a long time, and it's the most honorable profession. But the greatest, some of the titles I have are vice president of this, president of that, and all. But the greatest title that was ever given to me was given to me by a man in Kenya who said, Krish Dhanam is the most contagious Christian I know. Attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Features tell, benefits sell. So look at everything you offer and don't sell it as a feature. Ask yourself, what does it solve? What does it do for the client? And then make sure that you change your game plan. I'll give you an illustration. Many years ago, we went to a company to offer sales training. And I meet a lot of you who come to me saying, I'm in corporate training, I'd like to get into public speaking, this will help. We went to this company, and the guy wanted sales training. I said, why do you want sales training? Or at least my colleague said, why do you want sales training? He said, well, I've not slept a day since I started this business. Pastor David pointed out, the first 18 months, 36 months, you're up all hours of the night trying to figure it out because you're balancing life. He said, why do you want sales training? He said, if I have sales training, we'll sell some more, and then I can hire an operations manager. Remember, in the world we live in, questions are your friend, answers are your enemy. Be an inquisitive person to speak more by asking questions than authoritatively just telling people what you do. So he said, why is that important? Well, if I hire a sales manager, then he'll be able to manage the business, and then I can take some time off. What would you do in your time off? Well, since I began the business, I've not gone fishing one day or even played a hole of golf. Then I realized we were not selling sales training, we were selling a golf game. Selling is what your product or service will do for the customer. If you've been in business 5 years, if you've been working for 7 years, you probably made a commission on something you sold, but you probably spent it. The client still has the benefit of it. Who got the better deal? They did. Unless you believe that, you're always going to be backpedaling. That's why when people ask me, what do you do? I said, and my business card has always said, since email came out, and trust me, I've existed before email. I teach a group of youngsters in Dallas who think anything before 2000 is beefy. Oh, Mr. Dhanam, that's olden days. But I did exist before email. But I've always existed since she-mail, because apparently that communicates differently. So, my bride and communication, man, that's a whole different trip. The other day, I just came downstairs. She said, are you going to wear that? I said, no, I just wanted to irritate you. Now I'll go back and change. I don't know what it is about women and their ability to question. Absolute craziness. Turn here. Thank you, little princess. I didn't know. Without your expert advice, I'd be stuck in a ditch in Macedonia somewhere. Women somehow have it all figured out. I came home one day. I was soaking wet. She says, is it raining? No, I took the fish for a walk. Of course it's raining. Standing next to the car. She's standing next to the car. I said, what's wrong? She said, do you think it's flat? I said, no, the other three just swelled up. But that's a whole different thing. I just had to get it off my chest. That's just me. But I wear the pants in my family. She tells me what color. So, all right. So, when I got married, I told her, I said, sweetheart, I'm going to make all the big decisions. I'm the man. She said, okay. I said, you're going to make only the small decision. I said, okay. 39 years, we haven't had a big decision. So, but the reason I'm giving you these illustrations is we fail at our homes and we want to serve the world because Jesus has called you. And yet Jesus has called you, you can't deal with your wife. One day I came home, I'm an efficiency expert, so I like to tell people how to do stuff. Like I said, those that can't do, those that can't teach, those that can't teach become consultants, right? So I went home one day and she's making breakfast and she's got all these moves. Bread, eggs, butter, toast. And in my mind I'm saying, I can speed up the process. See, men are stupid because when we think stuff, you should never say it. The first 3 things you say are always wrong. So I opened my big yap and said, sweetheart, I think we can solve this problem and we can do breakfast in fewer steps. We have solved the problem. I now make my own breakfast. So it's features tell, benefits sell, learn at home. The reason I'm giving you these simple illustrations is we don't perfect the ripples, we're never going to conquer the tsunamis. If we don't perfect the ripples, you're not going to conquer the tsunamis. By the same token, if you learn in class, you will never have to learn in cash. Life is a classroom. Every step of the way, we are failing in communication and asking ourselves why the big things are not happening. We don't know how to talk to each other. We treat a $5 dog and a $2 cat better than we do our own children. The phone will ring and it's a telemarketer and we'll say, tell him I'm not home. What we're saying is lie for me, don't ever lie to me. Small things, big stuff. That's what I mean. See, right now we're in the valley, but the food we eat on the mountaintop has always grown in the valley. Nothing grows on the mountaintop. If you want a mountaintop experience, don't look at the mountaintop. Look back to where you came from and bring enough people to where you are, and on their shoulders, they'll take you to the mountaintop. That's the giving spirit. That's the guiding spirit. That's benefit-oriented thinking. So what I would encourage you to do as you look at that thing tonight, write down various features. Do it private, do it personal, do it public, whatever. But write down different features in your life and ask yourself, how can you rephrase them as benefit statements? See, for many years I told my bride, everything I do for you. How many of you have done that? We've all done that. That's how we justify balance. The day I changed it to everything I'm able to do because of you. The home became my refuge, and the rest of the world was just a stop. When people ask me, where are you going? I'm going home. I just have to stop off in India on the way. Changes the perspective, and it changes your beat, changes how you do it. All right? Oh, I thought he was coming to tell me my time's over. It's like, so never trust a guy. Maratha Samraj ka bawarchi. So verbalizing the value proposition. Raise your right hand as high as it'll go. Now raise it a little higher. Why didn't you do that to begin with? I said as high as it'll go. We all save a little bit for a rainy day that never comes. 97% of the people in this world are comfort zone thinkers. Good, honest, tax-paying, law-abiding. 3% are effective zone thinkers. Effective zone thinkers always lead. Comfort zone thinkers will always follow. If you want a kingdom mindset, learn to lead. Learn to be a David. Pick up the 5 stones, realizing that you only see one giant, but you're prepared for 4 more, Scripture says. That's a mindset. Be a Daniel and God. Be a Nehemiah. I'm about an important work. I'm not coming down. These are all given illustrations. Don't worry about the character of our heroes. All of them are flawed. And that's what the beauty. When I followed this Christ, I realized I loved him more for his humanity than his divinity. Everybody claims their God is divine. But my God's humanity is what convinced me. Look at our heroes. Abraham was too old. Sarah laughed at God. Naomi was a widow. Rahab was a prostitute. Zacchaeus was too short. Thomas was a doubter. Timothy had an ulcer. Peter was a denier. Lazarus dead. In fact, one of my most fascinating stories is when I think of Lazarus. When you preach him in the Bible, he's like this great character because it was a miracle of all miracles. But I want you to imagine that guy. Finally dies. He's now in heaven because he knows Jesus. It was his friend. He's enjoying heaven now. The mansion. Knock on the door. Are yaar, recall aaya. We have a recall. What do you mean recall? I am wants you back. Oh man, please, check again. Make sure there's no mistake. What do you mean? I like the indoor plumbing. I'm glad I don't have to hear those complaining sisters anymore. But here's the serious side of benefits. When my dear friend Nabil Qureshi was at the end of his life, and I called him and I said, Brother Nabil, how are you doing? That thick accent of his brother Krish. The believer in me is pretty sure I'm done as a doctor. But the follower and disciple in me is still hoping for Lazarus, twice dead friend of Jesus, which is what was written on Lazarus' tomb when he became Bishop of Antioch. What would you want written on your tombstone about your journey with this Christ? How do you want to be remembered? What is your legacy? Once someone asked me, Mr. Dhanam, what do you want said at your funeral? I said, I want the pastor to say, I think he's still moving because I'm not ready to go. But If you came to my funeral and if I'd really checked out, my tombstone has already decided what will be written on it. Proud husband, loving father, suffering servant for my sovereign Lord. How do you want to be remembered? Every one of those things matter in the benefit-oriented way in which you build your business. In the contrarian way in which you say, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ, I don't need to go with the flow. I want to be like the thief on the left who had as much chance as anybody else to do anything. He couldn't. One said, save yourself. The other said, remember me. I want every day to be on my knees saying, Lord, remember me. Someone asked me, what is your greatest fear as an evangelist? That all the world will be saved and it won't need me. That's a burden. That's what should wake you up at night, keep you alert in the morning. One of my friends said, Krish, what is your greatest wish? My greatest wish is when my feet swing off the bed in the morning, I want the devil to say, oh my God, he woke up again. Our job on earth is to fight evil. God will allow you to build amazing things, but we have to keep the main thing at all times. And that's why I use this benefit-oriented approach. How do you communicate? Change your vocabulary. In fact, I'm going to give you this. Most of you are content-rich because everybody is got a master's degree, everybody is a PhD, everybody is a gold medalist and very accomplished. All of us are intent poor. You want a kingdom mindset? Be an intent-oriented communicator and not a content-driven purveyor of whatever you think is you have to spew. Intent-focused, other people-focused. So, all right? I'll cover the thing and then we'll do some questions with you guys. Verbalizing. Move from I to they. I have 4 principles I've outlined here, and you can write some reflections and notes. Everything you do in this world is a process and a transaction. Somehow we limit it to the office, but no, everything you do is process and transaction. Everything you do is communication. Problem solving is the difference. We problem solve at all levels. So the reason I want you to understand some of these principles is I want you to now become a 24-hour champion. I don't want you to look at business at 8 hours and family as 16. I want you to only have one set of principles that would easily navigate and flow between the 8 and the 16. Skill allows you to make a living. Will allows you to perfect a life. When will and skill come together, you become a 24-hour champion. Learn the discipline necessary to earn a living, but practice the foundations necessary to perfect a life. And then suddenly you'll realize that that's what a kingdom mindset is, winning everything. What profited the man to gain the whole world and lose his soul in the process? Let's say you became a big businessman and your family life crumbled. The reason I do is I speak from authority. Our son is now estranged. Some of you are familiar with the story, and I've never shied away from that. But for the first 3 years, I carried that burden. What did we do wrong? He walked away from the faith, very successful, makes a lot of money. He's now doing his master's, and he's qualified on every level. But for some reason, he believed, because he was raised in an evangelical home, that he didn't need this God. And maybe the pressure was too much. And just as I said that statement, many of your hearts sank, because I guarantee you in a room this size, there are at least 20 people experiencing the same thing I just shared in your very immediate families. This is what the world does. They chew up and spit out that which we send out because we have not protected them enough. So I'm speaking from authority. Remember, Paul's thorn never left him. Jacob's limp never left him. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean we're immune. I'm as injured as the other guy comes. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But what I'm saying is that these principles work on all levels. We produced a good kid. He's an adult. He's made his own decision. We pray he'll come back. But the reality is that doesn't mean you stop living. Happiness depends on happenings, but joy is undiluted. It's unadulterated. It's pure. Why do I keep doing all this? I can hang it up. In fact, the answer to that question was, why did you come? I come because of the emails I get from this nation where one person will say, when you came 7 years ago, you changed my life. Yesterday, I met a man who first heard me 15 years ago, and he was really sweet, saying that you're one of 3 people I admire. I never began to do this, but that's what kingdom living is. I'm going to drop a bomb right now, and it is this. Partial obedience is disobedience. Partial obedience is disobedience. Just because you're injured doesn't give you a monopoly on misery. All right? The benefit they receive is the reason in personal life, in family life. My father couldn't say, I love you to me for the longest time because it was not his nature. That's not how he was raised. Today he says, I love you both by text and verbally every day. What happened? Over a period of time. Watch me carefully. Every thought you have about what is right or wrong will eventually slowly become the ideas that shape your life. The ideas that shape your life about good, bad, right, wrong slowly evolve into the habits that you start displaying. The habits you consistently display became the behavior for which you're known. Your behavior reveals your character. Your character shapes your destiny. The very way you think alters the outcome. See, there are a lot of neuro-linguistic programming people, and there are a lot of people, psychoanalysis, they give you all kinds of, nonsense they spew. In fact, when I first began motivational speaking, there was one great statement, and the statement went like this. You become what you think. That's a big lie. If you became what you think, every teenage boy would become a girl. Because that's what they think. That's just the reality of it. But we're living in very fascinating times. I grew up in an era where if you had a picture of Wonder Woman in your room, you had to put a sign outside your door saying, privacy please, because as a teenager, Wonder Woman, fully clad. It was considered blasphemy to have a poster of Wonder Woman on your door. Now we've reached a page where we wonder what a woman is. Society has gone completely nuts because we don't think of what the repercussions are. I would re-engineer the process. Right now, my role in America as dean of an academic institution where I teach American history to Americans is to get them at the age of 18 and 19. I teach them master's level stuff when they are with me for 6 months. And when they go to college, they're smarter than the professors, because my prayer is no other parent should go through what I did when I sent my child to school unprepared and they knocked the faith out of him. What are you doing in your kingdom mindset? Besides building business, besides doing all that, I'm about the practical everyday that guides you, that begins to shape you and reveal who you are. All right. When you throw your paper in anger, make sure you know where it lands. What will be versus what is? What will be versus what is? Reality is a harsh pill to swallow. What will be versus what. Some of you have heard me make this illustration before, but maybe it bears repetition. When I was a youngster of about 7, on the way to that proverbial timpani school, a new temple had been built. I was subscribing to a different worldview at that time. So on Tuesdays, my mom would give me a coconut, and she would say, you need to go to the temple on your way to school in the morning. I was a horrible student. I graduated in that half of the class that made the top half possible. I mean, I was outstanding, always standing outside, but not a good student. And my mom's desire was that if she gave me a coconut and I gave it to the head man at the temple, he would bust the coconut. And then in that act, somehow my intelligence would increase. Okay? Regardless of the story, we know that's not true because it hasn't. But here was the ritual. Every Tuesday you take a coconut, the guy takes it from you, He busts the coconut. He uses the water to consecrate. He keeps half the coconut. He gives you the other half as a blessing. You bring it back to your mother. Now you're 7, you're 8. What are the odds that a half coconut in your bag will be able to resist your temptation? At some point, something is going to happen. And that was my introduction to a consultant, my first young friend by the name of Vikram. In my life, I think the first management consultant I ever met who had a solution. He came to school with a hammer. He said, let's avoid the middleman. You come straight to me. Okay, this is supply chain. Okay? He says, let's avoid the middleman. You bring the coconut to me. I will also come with a glass. I will bust the coconut with a hammer. For any of you who grew up in South India, you know the tanni of the coconut water is the sweet nectar of the gods. So we would partake in the water of that coconut. We would eat half the coconut during the day whenever our appetite requested. And then Vikram would bless the other half. And I would take it back to my mother. This went on for the next 7 years. I grew up, I got married, I had a child, I went away to the West, I became an author, and I decided it was time for confession. This is another thing I want to tell you. Confess to God, stop confessing to people. Because they'll always find fault with your confession. So my mother was sitting down, I was sitting down there. I'm now a married man, I have a job. And I said, Amma, you remember the coconut? She said, yes. I said, Vikram was blessing it. I am not kidding. My mother said, Ayyo, that all popular South Indian word. Ayyo, that's why we've been having all this bad luck. Sometimes we're creatures of habit. And we begin to ascribe too much to stuff that happens, and it's easy to blame the devil. What I'm saying is that in kingdom mindset, ownership is paramount. Responsibility is supreme. Adrian Rogers, that great preacher, said, if you raise a generation based on rights, all you will have is revolution. If you raise them based on responsibility, we'll have revival. Do we need revival in the land? Start claiming the responsibility of being a disciple. And stop fighting wars that are not necessary to fight. Stop engaging in diatribes that are not going to go anywhere. God knows we have enough problems with just our own people. We are the most fickle Christians. We worship we crucify our living. We worship the dead. And we shoot the wounded. We do enough damage to ourselves. And sometimes it's so tragic when you see the vitriol we spread to each other. When one of us falls because of a character, like vultures, they pounce on the carcass. Somehow trying to self-aggrandize them, saying, I'm better than that. No. If you believe the Bible, and you should, it's very clear and very succinct. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You want to know what sin is? John Wesley asked Susanna Wesley, and here's what she said. Anything that weakens your reason, impairs the tenderness of your conscience, obscures your sense of God, takes away your relish for spiritual things. In short, anything that increases the appetite of the body over the mind, that to you is sin, no matter how beautiful it is on of itself. What is weakening the tenderness of your conscience? I thought I'd have more time, but I got a little carried away. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be around for a little longer. I want to make sure that we've saved the best for last, so that we want to make sure that you get that thing. So I'll just simply close by saying, of all the groups I've spoken to, by golly, you guys have been the most recent. So, all right. So with that, I'll invite up whoever is coming to take the microphone from me. Adios.